Hello. I will be sharing my team case presentation with Matthew Bender. So the background of the case is Netflix was able to evolve their company into being dead in the water to be thriving in one of the most successful companies of our time. So I remember when I was a kid and I saw Netflix's logo on the Xfinity On Demand, and I had no idea what Netflix was. And this was probably about 10 years ago, and Netflix was not successful. Really, they were a DVD renting company, and they didn't do really any much streaming at the time. Blockbuster was more successful than Netflix, so Blockbuster was also a DVD renting company, but instead of Netflix, Blockbuster had those rental kiosks that people would come and get whatever movie they wanted to rent from. Netflix would they would give their DVDs to whoever is renting from them, and they would send it to their house instead. But instead of Blockbuster, Netflix was able to adapt, and they ended up doing mostly original content, meaning they produced their own movies, they produced their own TV shows. So Netflix kept highly talented people and paid them for what they were worth. So what was the main issue of this case? So the main issue was how to balance freedom with having structure in an expanding organization. So Netflix gave their employees really too much freedom, and they might have taken advantage of it, and they wouldn't have an incentive to work hard. And Netflix becoming a global organization meant they had a bunch of different cultures, meaning let's say there was a branch in Asia, and this branch in Asia had a completely different culture to a branch in North America. So it would be kind of hard to manage these two different branches because these people are completely different to each other. So the first solution is conducting surveys in different regions, like I mentioned earlier. So what managers could do is have these employees just take a survey and how they want to be managed, right? Um, and like I said, these different cultures might work well under different management. So one region might perform better under loose management rather than but another could perform better with more structure, more rules, more regulations. And this could be tied to their culture. Some cultures um, perform better with more rules and regulations like they did in school growing up, and some might not. So the second solution is using loose rules instead of no rules for everyone. And this would provide structure without losing the attraction of freedom. So a lot of employees, they love freedom. They like to um, differentiate their work life with their personal lives. So Netflix implemented unlimited vacation days, but this solution would instead block off certain weeks where employees can take time off. So these unlimited vacation days, a lot of employees could essentially take advantage of. You know, they can take like a whole month off and not do any work really. But this instead would block off these certain weeks. So employees should run what they want to buy by the managers under their under the spending policy. So in the case, what Netflix did was they told, or essentially the employees could buy whatever they wanted. It's just Netflix told these employees to keep Netflix's best interests, right? So they could easily take advantage of this as well because, they can buy whatever they wanted and say, oh, this is Netflix's best interest, right? But this would allow the managers to kind of like take control of the matter and make sure they're not, spending willy-nilly. So the third solution is having incentives to work toward. And this would be providing bonuses or wage increases for employees who are doing good work. So what Netflix did is they essentially paid their employees at the top of their personal market. It didn't have any bonuses. So these employees, they would go to these different um, companies and essentially have an interview, and whatever these companies would tell this employee how much they would pay for them to work there. And so these employees went to their managers and their higher ups and said, "Hey, this is what they would pay me if I left this company and go to this other company." And so what Netflix did is they essentially matched whatever the other company was going to pay them. And um, but essentially, I think incentives would help employees more because instead of matching their goals, I feel like they would exceed their goals and they would want to perform better to receive these incentives because, most people like that extra cash on their salary. So, what I think is the best solution is to use loose rules instead of no rules for everyone. So, I think it balances the best of both worlds with the freedom for employees and the structure every company should have, right? So, Netflix gave all their employees a lot of freedom, but they didn't have a lot of structure. And I feel like if a company doesn't have any structure, it's almost like the Wild West where there's no rules, no regulations. They can do whatever they want. And like I mentioned before, they can take advantage of. And why I think this solution, having these loose rules, is better than, conducting surveys with different regions is because if you were to do that, that would essentially alienate those branches in these different regions. And most companies, they don't want to do that, right? They want to have these branches really close together under one management. They want all these branches to have the same rules, have the same regulations because it, it essentially wouldn't be fair, right? If you were to have one branch have no rules, no regulations, have another branch have way more, right? And this solution is better than having money incentives for employees because I feel like money incentives send out the wrong message, right? It's, you know, giving these companies want employees to be passionate about what they're working for, right? They don't want it just to be about the money, right? And if you have employees who have, you know, big passions about what they're doing, they would perform way better because they love their job, right? they don't dread going into work. They love going into work, and that would make better employees. Thank you for listening.